I wonder if you know this story. It's a great one for the classroom. Sometimes I call it the story of David and Matthew. Sometimes I call it the scratch card story. Let's see if I can tell it to you in 1 minute. It goes like this. David is a creature of habit. He's a British man, lives somewhere in England, and every day at the same time he goes for a walk and he goes to his local newsagents to buy a scratch card. Now, when David walks into the shop and opens the door, a bell rings to let the shopkeeper know that a customer's entered the shop, and the shopkeeper's name is Matthew. Matthew says, David. David says, Matthew. David walks towards the counter, takes a coin out of his pocket, puts it on the counter. Matthew picks up the coin, gives David a scratch card. David takes another coin out of his pocket and starts to scratch. Now, despite the fact that David buys a scratch card every day, he has never won anything, nothing at all. But today is his lucky day. David wins £50,000. And what does he do? Well, he picks up the scratch card, he tears it in half, and walks out the shop. And the question is why? Now, the reason I'm telling this story is I've just found a video of me 10 years ago telling that story to a group of teachers in Portugal at the API conference in Porto. And I'm kind of surprised, almost slightly shocked at the number of questions that I ask. I'll let you see this, and I'd love to know what you think. Do you think I ask a good number of questions, or do you think I ask too many questions? Watch this, and then I'll tell you why David tore up the scratch card and walked out the shop. All right, here we are.
Okay, let's start with David. David is an English gentleman. He's an English gentleman, and he would describe himself as a creature of habit. Exactly, a creature of habit. Are there any creatures of habit here? Everybody. Most people actually do describe themselves as being creatures of habit, don't they? Can you give me an example of something you do that makes you a creature of habit? Coffee every morning. David, our English gentleman, is certainly a creature of habit. There's something he does every single day at the same time. Can you guess what that thing is? It's not drinking coffee.
Have a shower?
Has a shower. I mean, I have a shower every day. I hope it doesn't make me a creature of habit. I thought it was like me kind of person who's interested in my own hygiene. He's such a creature of habit. He has a shower every day. So it's something he buys. Something David buys. Oh, it's great, because the thing that he buys is made of paper, but it's not a newspaper. Magazine. It's great, because the thing he buys is made of paper, but it's not a magazine. A comic book is great because the thing he buys is made of paper, but it's not a comic book. A lottery ticket is great because it's made of paper, and yes, it's the thing he buys. It's almost a lottery ticket, but not quite. A scratch card. It's a scratch card. It's a card. If you wanted to buy a scratch card here in Porto, where would you buy one from? A kiosk. And if David, being a traditional English gentleman who lives in the north of England, where would he buy one from? Newsagents, exactly. Every day at the same time, David leaves his home, he goes for a walk, he goes to his local newsagents, and he buys a scratch card, exactly. Put your hand up if you buy scratch cards. Once in a while. Put up your hands if you buy lottery tickets. Put up your hands if you've ever won anything. Okay, how much have you won? 12 euros. And what did you do with it? You didn't retire, apparently. Excellent. David has never won anything, despite the fact that he buys a scratch card every day at the same time and the same place. He's never won anything. What time is it? Anyone at the time? Almost 5 to 12. That's exactly the time that David leaves his house every day. He leaves at exactly almost 5 to 12. On the dot. So he leaves his home, he goes for a walk, he goes to his local newsagent's. When he opens the door, a bell rings. Why? A bell rings. When he opens the door, front door of his local newsagent's, a bell rings. To let the shopkeeper know that a customer has entered the shop. To let the shopkeeper know that a customer's... Notice that auxiliary has there? A customer's entered the shop. To let the shopkeeper know that a customer's entered the shop. One more time from your teacher. To let the shopkeeper know that a customer's entered the shop. Just hear it. Let me hear everybody. You ready? To let the shopkeeper know that a customer's entered. And the shopkeeper's name is Matthew. Exactly, Matthew. Do you think David and Matthew know each other? Of course you do. Of course they do. Now, when David enters the shop, only 2 words pass between David and Matthew. 1 word comes from David, 1 word comes from Matthew. What do you think those 2 words are? In fact, David says Matthew and Matthew says David. Right, let's pretend they know each other very well. Could you be David? Could you be Matthew? Okay, let's have David. What do you say?
Matthew.
Dave.
Know each other very well. It's David. What about you're really happy to see each other? You're really happy to see each other.
Matthew.
David.
What if you just can't be bothered? It's David again. Oh no, God.
Matthew.
David.
Okay, next. So David walks into the newsagent. He walks over to the counter. He takes out a coin and he puts it on the counter. Matthew knows the routine. Matthew picks up the coin, turns round, takes a scratch card, puts it on the counter, gives it to David, and David takes out another. What does he do? Yeah, third person singular S this time, not scratch but scratches. David scratches, scratches, scratches. And guess what? No. No, today is David's lucky day. How much do you think he wins? Guess, how much does he win? 2 euros higher. 2,000 euros higher. 1,000,000 euros lower. 50,000 pounds exactly. Now, how much is 50,000 pounds in euros? Let's say 60,000 euros. Now, here's the 60,000 euro dollar question. In pairs, what would you do if you won 50,000 pounds? Okay, you don't have to do it, but you get the idea, okay? The thing is, it's quite a good question because it's not too much. You couldn't quit your job, but it's a good amount of money to have some fun. Yeah, maybe a holiday. Yeah. What does David do? Buys 50,000 more scratch cards. Great guess. Shall I tell you? Shall I tell you? David rips up the scratch card and walks out the shop. And the question is, in one word, why?
So what did you think of that? It was really quite interesting for me to watch because in 10 years since I made that video, gave that presentation, I think, you know, my outlook and my kind of approach to asking questions during storytelling has changed a bit. I wonder if maybe there's too many questions, maybe interrupting the flow of the story, making it possibly frustrating for the listeners. I'm not sure, but I'd love to know what you think. There's nothing wrong, in fact, it's quite a good strategy, I think, or a technique to take those questions and move them to the very start. so that we can ask students the questions before we start the story. For example, do you buy scratch cards, lottery tickets? Have you ever won anything? Do you consider yourself to be a creature of habit? These are great questions for priming students for the story that are about to hear. So that's maybe one way I might have done things differently. But again, I'd like to know your opinion on this. And it does also show you how interactive a short story can be. It's not just questions. There's also, can you finish this sentence? Despite the fact that David buys a scratch card every day, you know, that part of the modelling or drilling, the present perfect, when, you know, when he walks into the shop, a bell rings, etc. You saw it. So yeah, what do you think about this? And finally, why did David tear up the scratch card and walk out the shop? Well, what I was doing there is a technique I use called video telling. The story comes from the narrative of a short film, very clever one, and I will link to it below. So I hope you enjoy it. Hope your students do too, and I'll see you in a new video next Wednesday. Bye-bye.